So I'm not sure.
Great. Well, welcome, first of all. Hold on, let me kick off the meeting. So this is the Town of Southborough meeting of the Community Preservation, Thursday, October 20th, 2022. It is recording. And pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16th, 2021. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. So I kick off the meeting. Again, Kristen, welcome as our newest member of the CPC.
Thank you.
Representing recreation. Much appreciate your time and commitment to this. And, I think at the end, we can do a little Q&A session and talk about things, introduce ourselves. But to begin with, I want to start off with the St. Mark's Bell Tower update. So let's see, I think those from St. Mark's, if you raise your hand, I'll move you over. Spencer. Oh, I got Keith again. Keith, are you part of the?
I am not.
Okay. Did I hang up on you last time?
You did, but I got back real quick. No problem.
All right. Well, Betsy, what do I do? So it says disable talking. Just click on that.
Well, then you're not going to hear anyone. What do you want to do?
I want to move Keith back without hanging up on him.
So there should be a little button, and you can move him over to gallery. If you go click on his name, and then there should come up a little thing where you can move him.
Andrew, don't worry. If you do bump me out, I can get back in. Not a problem.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So I got Lynn Spencer. Lynn's over.
Andrew, can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Great. I think that Mark Weiler was also trying to join the meeting.
Oh, he's there. I see him there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And possibly Bob Foster. He might be in the wings. Yeah. And then Steve Nelson is another person who might be waiting to get in.
Steve Nelson. Okay, I've got him. I don't see Bob Foster.
Okay.
Robert Foster.
Robert Foster. That's right,
Okay.
Ben.
All right, got him. All right.
Okay. I don't see myself in the room, but that's fine. Being a voice is good. Am I able to get screen sharing?
Oh, jeez.
Oh, gee. I'm with you. Believe me, I'm with you.
It's at the bottom. Oh, I'll mute it. It's at the bottom. There'll be a thing to permit screen share.
Because I do have a brief presentation. I promise
Andrew,
to be
have you
brief.
started this agenda item yet? I think you need to do that before we'll start.
I was trying to start. So I see screen share. I see all my screens. Screen share. Oh, here we go.
This is Freddie. Can I make a recommendation to everyone while Andrew's new at this? Can everyone mute yourselves unless you're the person speaking? It helps with background noise not coming through. So if you're not the speaker, just hit your mute button in the upper right-hand corner of your box.
Okay. So I've clicked on all participants should be able to share, or panelists, sorry. So Lynn, you want to try to share?
Sure. Do you see anything?
No.
Oh,
Hold
Well,
on.
then, when I see the bottom of my screen, the only thing that I see as an icon is the raise the hand thing. I'm not used to the webinar. I'm so sorry to this particular format. I just don't see things. Mark Weiler, can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes,
hold on,
I hear
hold
you.
on. I got it now. I got it now.
You got it? Oh, okay, great.
Hold on.
So I'll click join as a panelist.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Okay, now I see you.
Yeah, and I see you too. I see everybody. I see Freddie.
Yep.
Yep.
There you are, Lynn.
Okay, and I'm going to click share screen. And now can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, are we ready to rock and roll?
We are. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm Lynn Spencer. I am principal for historic preservation at my firm, Spencer Preservation Group. I'm privileged to work with the good folks at St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Southborough with a focus on the tower, which is an iconic structure for the town of Southborough. And you're seeing in this image the tower today, well, just before the staging went up, which you all have recognized, I think, now for several months. So I'll just move on to the next image and give you a little bit of background. We first became engaged with this project in 2017 when we were commissioned to do a conditions assessment report. Joining me on that was John Watney of Structures North, a very talented structural engineer who continues to be a prime consultant on this project. Our report enumerated a number of recommendations, identified serious masonry restoration issues, which had been caused in part by defective roofing, as well as incorrectly placed modern mortars, which had trapped moisture in the wall. The church was able to marshal resources to do an initial phase of stabilization work, which commenced in 2018 and finished up in 2019 by first tackling that roof at the very top of the tower, and with it the related restoration of the granite stone crenellations. This was funded in part by an emergency grant from the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund for $50,000, with the congregation putting up the match of $73,357,000. I might also add, as I'm going through this, is that the church has funded the architectural services and engineering services for all phases of this work, exclusive of the construction costs, which I'm showing you right now. That initial work simply reinforced the really perilous nature of some of this masonry. And in 2021, at the town meeting, based on a grant application that had been submitted by the St. Mark's, the town awarded a $300,000 community preservation grant, which was also joined by another MPPF grant for $50,000, and then with this church putting up over $400,000 for the project that we are now engaged in, which is the comprehensive masonry restoration on the tower itself. These are just some photographs that give you some sense of the conditions that we are working with. I'm always happy to show Bob Foster in these images. Bob Foster, along with Mark Weiler and Steve Nelson, are the three members of the St. Mark's community who have attended every construction meeting, every weekly meeting that we have on this project. And right behind Bob is Jim Perry, who is the master mason on this project. But you're seeing, as you look at these images, you can see that we have separation of the outer withe of stonework from the inner build of the walls. And this is part of the issue that has resulted in such extensive, actually, reconstruction of walls in this building, as well as what we call deep repointing throughout. It's a technically challenging project, and one that at certain points has elements of danger unless you are very skilled at what you're doing. And I have to say that the contractor on this project, Synoxo, is the contractor that worked with us on the first phase of work. Both of these projects were competitively bid. Synoxo was the low bidder on the first project, and they were significantly the low bidder on the second project, which has a budget of $751,251. I think their knowledge about the building and how it functioned gave them certainly a leading edge in this work. I'm showing you in these images the various elevations of the tower. What is shaded in blue is work that has been completed, which has included some reconstruction as well as deep repointing. In pink, you were showing the work that is now in progress. And for instance, on the north elevation, the image on the far right, you're seeing that the work on the buttresses is in progress right now, as well as the preparation and painting of the louvers, which feature red slate set in a wood frame, and that work will be completed this calendar year. In green, I'm showing the work that is going to move over into the spring of 2023. Actually, this is the most difficult and challenging work technically on this project, and in a subsequent slide, I will help you understand why. When you are seeing those little black dots with the arrows going to it, those are indicating anchors of various sorts that are going in to reinforce these walls. This is a close-up of one of those buttresses. So this is that inner core with the outer stone that is sort of leaning away from it. This is under construction now, along with its twin on the other side. This is the north elevation. The image on the far right shows the in-progress work on one of these buttresses.
Lynn, is that supposed to be all mortar there? in those
Yes,
Stones, it looks like dirt.
it's exactly what it looks like. It's dirt. So what happens is, the outer stones are sort of well placed and so on, but when they're working on the inside, depending on whose hands were on it, they are chinked up with pieces of stone and mortar. Sometimes I've found odd things in those cavities, but this is part of the problem, is that there's, I don't want to say, I'll just say less than perfect original construction that is now being fixed.
Was that supposed to be mortar originally that just
Yes.
decomposed to dirt?
Yes, what happened is that I had mentioned that the building had been repointed with hard mortars later on. That, the mortar joints are the things that allow masonry, stone, which is going to get wet, to actually gradually dry out. If you seal it with too tight of a mortar in a load-bearing masonry situation like this, you trap moisture within the wall, and that can lead to the disaggregation of the mortar. So it can actually turn to sand. It just, its component parts sort of melt away. And you can reach in and grab handfuls of that material. It's so soft.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm glad for the question. Good prompt. This just shows the schedule that we're on right now. We started this work in earnest in June, and that has proceeded. There's a team usually of 2 to 2 to 4 people on the job. This is not a job that can be overly staffed because of the difficulty of the work areas and maintaining safe standards throughout. So we're going to be working we believe into early December. Depends on the temperatures. We have to have temperatures of 40 degrees and rising to be safe on this. They will be, you have seen that this is a fully enclosed scaffolding, and they will be using some heating blankets at times to make sure that we keep it ahead of those nighttime temperature drops. We'll be then taking a break over the winter and then resuming work in the spring. Usually we can start getting to work on the early side in March, but again, it's going to be all temperature related. So we've written out the schedule in addition to what you see on the Gantt chart. The expectation is that we're going to be finished in early July. I mentioned earlier that the most technically difficult part of this project will be next, and that's the work in the spring. And what you're seeing here is the structural engineer's shoring diagram. Basically, we are supporting the upper part of this masonry by steel beams that get installed both on the outside as well as the inside of the building. They then have cables and slings that basically go over the top of the parapet and carry that entire structure from above and on those steel beams. So that is not work that we wanted to dive into with the time that we have left to us this year. It's work that we felt was prudent to defer till next year. In the meantime, the team will continue working on the buttresses, which have their own challenges. They're basically, you saw in the earlier image, I'll just go back. These are the buttresses. Those are the face pieces on them. Those are in the process of being dismantled and reconstructed. And then we have anchors that actually go through the buttresses and connect to the inner white walls. So, yeah. And that's the team. I have to give huge credit here to the St. Mark's group, Mark Weiler and Bob Foster. Steve Nelson isn't in this particular picture right now. Bob Foster may not like it if I say this, but in fact, he is 90 years old and he actually gets to the top of that staging for every job meeting. Slowly and carefully, but he does it. The man with the blue helmet and the blue outfit is Sean Delaney from Synoxo, who's the project manager. But the person whose hands are on this building is Jim Perry, the gentleman with the green helmet. And he was on the project with the first phase. He is assisted by, this is Rob Walters, who's a laborer, and then there's another master mason who happens to be his brother, Tim Perry, who's on this job as well. So with that, folks, that's our brief update on where we are on this project. In terms of payments, we are at the 50% mark in terms of payments and requisitions to the contractor. And as I said, then we'll be finishing up in the spring next year. So happy to answer any questions on this update.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming in and giving the update. I appreciate it. I definitely have seen the scaffolding up around the tower and assume good work was happening underneath, but we can't visually see it until light comes down. And so the pictures I thought were great. Shocking to see the especially that one right there.
Yeah, that one is a telling one.
Yeah. So I'll go around. Ben, any questions?
No questions. I just want to echo what you said, Andrew. I just want to thank you for coming in tonight and also for the fantastic communication throughout the project. This has been from our perspective on CPC, the most organized and professionally run project that we've been a part of, and it's been an absolute
besides the library.
The library also fantastic communication, but it feels like a real luxury because it's something we don't often see. So I just wanted to thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
David, any questions?
No questions, just echoing Ben's sentiments as well about how well this has been run and presented along with the library. Yeah, so no questions.
Had to give you a plug there, Lynn.
Thank you.
For those who weren't around, Lynn will also help with the library project, the re-roofing there. Mark, any questions?
Yeah, briefly, but great presentation. It looks fabulous. Thanks for coming in. Any surprises, Lynn, financial or otherwise, to date?
Well, I can say there's always surprises, but I had spent a fair amount of time on this building with John Watney and our structural engineer, and then Jim. So I guess I had that first phase project had introduced me to how far gone this was. I think the surprise to me is this. We had assumed that we'd be doing more grout injection than we're actually doing. We're ending up doing more rebuilding work, which is the traditional masonry practice. And I guess that's been a pleasant surprise to me. I'm also continually amazed by Jim Perry and his innate understanding of engineering and how to be safe on a job. So I know I shouldn't be surprised by that, but I really need to call that out. Synoxo is very safety conscious and really brings on and the best quality masons that you can find, quite honestly. So big shout out for Synoxo and that team.
And any reason to think or not think that the funding is adequate?
Well, there is there is that worry. I won't say otherwise. So far, we have not had. Oh gosh, now I'm getting feedback. Sorry. So far, we have not had any significant extras, but we are paying for some scaffolding rental over the winter. It's more expensive to take it down and put it back up. We will be taking down the upper 2 levels because we're finished down to the clock tower level. I'll just go back to the slides. We're going to take the scaffolding down to this level. So we will be able to see the louvers again and the very top of it, but we will be looking at carrying costs from this level down over the winter. The planking will be removed. It'll just be the frames that are left. So there's a demobilization and remobilization. We're working with Synoxo now. They understand the budget limitations, but we are concerned about the money. We're always concerned about the money. So if you're offering more, more, love to hear about it.
No, I thank you for your candor and good luck. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Great. Kristen, any questions? Kristen, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Len, I had a couple. So the one, while the scaffolding stays up over the winter, is that entrance still being able to be used for the church?
No, that entrance has been off limits since the job started. So this construction fence that's there now will stay up. I think I show it yeah. Well, the fence doesn't show here, but so this will stay in place. The church has been using the other entrances available to them. And
is the clock still working now, or is that offline while this all happens?
No, the clock is offline while this happens. We also are doing work inside the tower. So we've done masonry repointing within the building. We're reinforcing the belfry and the clock decks, the wood decks. And then the church is planning to build a separate enclosure for the clock mechanism to make sure that it stays, as protected as possible. But for now, the clock mechanism is out of the bill, is out.
And then one other question, just because I'm curious. You said that the top part of the clock tower was going to be suspended by, steel beams that go through and lift it up. Was it like completely lifted up away from, self-suspended, or was it just?
No, this is our project for next spring, where we actually, we just above the clock levels, we'll be putting these beams in and holding this all up while these sections of the work below are taken apart and then rebuilt. And this is a shoring scheme.
Wow.
And, the engineers, I can show you pages of calculations. So we have an engineer who is reviewing this, and then Synoxo has an engineer who created this plan. Now, the fact that these two engineers used to be in the same company together 10 years ago, I think is good, because they know how to talk to each other and work it through. But this idea of holding up large mass masonry with cables and lifting slings and lifting hardware is something that has been done on many other occasions. Each one of these slings and hardware has the capacity of 1,500 pounds in a limited 15,000 pounds, in a limited area. So
Wow.
that'll be worth lots of pictures when that happens.
Great. Well, thank you.
But yeah, you see there's on the inside of the building, there's another beam that goes through and it all gets connected.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate
Okay, sure.
it. Well, again, thank you for coming in, giving us an update with the project. Appreciate it, and looking forward to hearing how the spring goes.
Sure.
Ideally, just planning on it, it would be great if you guys could come in probably a month or two before you think it's going to wrap up, so we could know just things are on schedule, and get a status then, and then we can time the wrap up of it. So, if you can reach out to us when you're about at that point, would be ideal, so that we could just make things close out smoothly when it happens.
Okay,
All right.
happy to do that.
Excellent. Mark, Steven, everyone, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Can I say
Anything to
something,
add?
Andrew?
Yeah, Freddie.
Freddie, I just also wanted to mention how cooperative and proactive communicators the team at St. Mark's have been as well. And, it's all around been a great experience. They're reaching out to us and letting us know what's going on before it was even a question in our minds. So that's a wonderful way to communicate. So thank you for that. Okay.
Well, big credit has to go to Mark Weiler and Steve Nelson and Bob. But yeah, and Mark's been really the lead on communication for the congregation.
Well, with the CPC, they've been proactive, so that's good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just want to mention this is Mark Weiler. You're always welcome to come over and tour while we have the scaffolding in place. If you want to take an up close look, we'll have a hard hat for you, and we can make an arrangement for you to see the project up close. Glad to do that.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's excuse me, it's Kristen. How would we actually take you up on that? I'm new. This is my very first night on the committee, so excuse the naive question.
Can I suggest, because I have the emails, that anyone interested could email me, and then I'll communicate with the church and sort of keep it organized and maybe, would you prefer one by one, Mark, or if there was a group that wanted to come together?
So if we had, I imagine maybe like a group, not more than 4 to, because of the scaffolding and number of people and the workers there, we would be doing this site visit while, of course, Synaxo is there to be able to guide us through. So that would be helpful. But if it's, groups of 4, two different times, that would be fine. We can make that happen.
So I'll send out an email after this to see who's interested and then talk with you, Mark, about timing, and we can set it up before the snow flies.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that okay with you, Kristen?
That sounds great. Thank you.
If there's going to be a group visiting, I'll join if I'm able to.
So it might make sense to try to do this on Wednesday afternoons when we have the job meetings. Because we meet at 1 or 1:30. Maybe you come at 2:30 or so, or something like that, after we've done our sort of workup. But that's when I'm there too.
Great.
Yes, that would make sense. Very good idea.
So we'll set it up by email and we can have everyone's input, okay? Thank you.
Okay, good
Excellent.
idea.
Well, thanks, Lynn and team. Appreciate it.
I'm not going to go away. I
Are
think
you
I'm on
sticking around?
next.
You sticking around for the townhouse pre-bid?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm the townhouse person too.
Well, you gotta
Okay.
get Aaron
Good luck,
over
Lynn.
too.
Thanks.
Yeah. Once again, thanks for all your support.
Yeah, thank you. All right, how do I move them back?
Yeah, move me back.
No. Let's see, Mark. Oh, he dropped. Okay. So, Mr. Parent. So, Lynn, is it just you and
I think it's John Parent and myself. Yeah, and me.
did John come over? There he is. John, you there? You on mute? You're still on mute.
Sorry about that.
No problem. All right, so this next agenda item is the Southborough Townhouse pre-bid update. John or Lynn?
Actually going to hand it right over to Lynn for a little presentation.
Okay.
Yep. So do I have the screen still?
Yeah, I didn't change anything. Afraid I'll break it.
Is that on for you? No.
Andrew, can you bring Betsy back?
Where'd she go?
She's in the attendees.
All right, I got her.
So are you seeing my screen? No.
No.
No. Oh, what have I got going wrong here? Just give me a moment to sort of reset things. How's that now?
There it is.
Yep, there it is. Okay, great. Well, actually, that same wonderful town meeting that took place outdoors in May of 2021 also reviewed this project, which is for the exterior envelope restoration of your wonderful townhouse. So this is going to be an update report on where we are on things. But you can see that we have had a lift on the building, taking an up close look at it. Just a little bit of background. You have really an signature building. I think you're very well aware of it. 1870, actually designed by the same architect who worked on St. Mark's Episcopal Church. In 1996, you made a notable addition with an elevator pavilion at the rear of the building. And that was done very much in the spirit of the original architecture, using the red brick, the sandstone, and so on. So there's really a great architectural historical coherence to this building. I happen to love this image of the building dressed in bunting, so in honor of President Roosevelt's visit. So that's kind of exceptional. Just, this slide just gives you a little bit of that sort of chronology. We first took a look at the building in 2020. We did a conditions assessment from the ground with binoculars and getting as close to the building as we could. That was then the basis of that community preservation grant that was approved by the May town meeting. And then the town naturally had to put this back out to designer selection. We were very happy to be chosen to work on it, and then began by revisiting the building with a lift so we could get very close to things that previously we were looking at from the ground. So we are ready to put this project out to bid. But as you all are very aware, this economy has made, has given everybody a pause and a feeling of great care and prudence and how we sort of package this project for bid. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. As I said, we are planning to put it out. This is a schedule that we can work on. We would be putting it out in early November for what is, in this case, a Chapter 149 public procurement project. In that public procurement, we have 3 categories of filed sub-bidding: masonry, roofing, and flashing, and painting work. So the way things work is those trades get bid first, and then the general bids would be due 2 weeks later. So we would, in early January, in December, we'll have presented the bids to John Parent and the Board of Selectmen and the Facilities Committee, and then a decision can be made about awarding based on what we hope is going to be an acceptable bid. And then the project would go out into construction with the fall of 2023 as being the estimated time of completion based on this schedule. Just to recap, what is the work? The work is comprehensive repointing of the entire building, selective repair of deteriorated woodwork, particularly at the cornice with the soffits and fascias, replacement of the asphalt shingle roof on the hip section of the building, with new gutters. We are suggesting, for reasons of economy, that these be done in copper colored aluminum in the correct profile. We're looking at replacement of the wood windows with new wood windows that are energy efficient and operable. And then we are looking at replacement of the deteriorated entry door. That door had been reworked in 1996 with glass panels and the style and rail arrangement of the original door. But the clear finished woodwork is totally, the veneer is totally blown out, and it's at the point that it really needs to be replaced. We are going to be replacing it in the same configuration with the glass panels, but really suggest painting it for maintenance and durability rather than trying to fight with clear finish woodwork. And then everything that's painted would, the cornice, the windows, the doors all get painted. And we are suggested that that be done based on paint analysis. So a little bit more about that in a minute. One of the things the aerial lift inspection allowed us was a close look at the gutters, which we could see from the ground, which looked reasonably okay. But once we got up and looked carefully at them, we could see that, in fact, there was considerable deterioration. And we are suggesting that those get replaced, including the downspouts. And as I previously mentioned, we're looking at copper colored aluminum for reasons of economy. And this was a new addition of scope to the budget. Another addition of scope to the, oh, well, this will give you a little bit of what I mean by the correct profile. You can see that based on a historic photograph on the left, the profile of that gutter, the original gutter, was a cyma recta. As you see from the image on the right, the later gutter, when it was replaced, was done with a cyma reversa profile. We're suggesting you go back to the original cyma recta profile.
Lynn, just does that make a difference in how the water flows or just appearance?
No, it's in a matter of appearance, Andrew.
Okay.
You know what's key to this is making sure the gutters are pitched for flow. That for sure is something that we're going to need to ensure.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if it actually made a difference.
We had another surprise when we were on this building. And this surprise is actually one that has to deal with philosophy. What we found is that when you actually opened up the joints, we found a fairly thin layer of light tan mortar on top of what we see as a very dark gray, almost black mortar. And this is not unusual. This is something that we've seen on many buildings of this period. I can actually count a half dozen. One of them is under restoration right now, the Canton Townhouse, their town hall. But it was a similar situation, a lipstick layer that's called lipstick pointing, superficial pointing on top of the earlier mortar. And we are suggesting that there's every reason to think about restoring this building with its very dark, almost black mortar. We are doing a comprehensive repointing job, and this would be the time to do it. So I'll be
Lynn, help. I need to be spoon-fed on this one.
Yep,
So,
happy to do it.
You're saying in the past, like before the touch-up was done, the original mortar was black. Is that right?
Black. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you see that in the image here. I don't know if you can see my cursor on this, but we've just opened up that through that very thin layer, and there is that very dark mortar below it. And that's a handful of it.
And that's not just because moisture got back there and corroded the old mortar and it turned it black, but it really was originally black.
It was really originally black.
Okay. Well, thanks.
And here's another thing. We did paint analysis. And, this is a close-up of the cornice with some of the brackets. And that's just at the top of the front gable. What you're seeing in these two images are the stratigraphy of paint layers on this building. And the image on the left is seeing it in color. The image on the right is a fluorescent view of it where you can actually see the layering a little bit more clearly. What we find is that what is now painted, a pleasant shade of off-white, in fact, wasn't that color originally. It was this color, which is that sort of strong tan with bits of pigment in it. And that, we think, was actually really trying to say to that cornice was matching the color of the tan sandstone that is a prominent trim element on this building. So the color up here, Benjamin Moore HC21, is what the individual who did the paint analysis, Bill Finch of Finch and Rose, has matched to your original color. Now, that cornice paint, in fact, up here was sanded originally. We're not suggesting you do that. That was a technique where painters did it one of two ways. One is that they actually, and painters in those days, by the way, were mixing their paints on the job themselves. They had linseed oil, they had white lead, and they had pigments, and they would be mixing them in big vats, or somebody would be doing it, not the painters, but the helpers, and then it would go on to the job. And then sand would be cast at it. sometimes sand was actually mixed into the paint before it was applied. So there's two different ways of doing that. We're not suggesting you do that today, but we do suggest strongly that you consider, we are recommending that you actually return the cornice painted elements to this tan color, which I think will be a rich complement to the sandstone itself.
So Lynn, when you say you're recommending that, and John, I'm going to ask you, like, who's making that call? Is that the select board?
Ideally, I mean, if you guys have no objection, I think this is the way we should just go. We can ask the select board. I think they probably would want to defer to you guys on this, but we can definitely ask them, get their input.
You know, I just don't want, you know, when all the scaffolding comes down and people say black mortar and sand tones instead of off-white, and be like, what happened, right?
I totally understand. I'm sure it's going to be a shock to some people, but it is a historic restoration, and that's historically what it was.
Agreed. So I just think there should be I know Sam's on here, but you know, there should be if you're not doing it already, you know, inform the select board and maybe the historic commission that, you know, this is the way we're going. So that everyone's on the same page. I just don't want people to, you know, everyone to be in tune with what it's gonna look like in the end.
Now, Andrew, I know you just didn't use the word everyone. We all know not everyone will agree.
Yeah, I know not everyone, but at least I would say this, you know, the select board, because it's technically their building that, you know, they're using on a regular basis. And then, you know, it's not really up to us to decide. We're doing the funding. But, you know, probably historical commission and the select board should really be in tune with what this is going to look like in the end.
It's Kristen, like, sorry, I got to take my mask. It's Kristen. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I would think the historical commission would have the guidelines in regards to what, you know, fits or does not fit within historical guidelines. The select board, I'm a little more surprised about, but is there not guidelines about this?
It's a great question. I don't know if they have guidelines to it, but this is the first. I mean, Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the first you've reported back to anyone in the town about the paint sample analysis you've done?
The only other person I've talked with is John and the owner's representative, Mary Bolso.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense to, I recently heard this term. I think it makes sense to socialize this to various folks. The historical commission would be an important board to hear this. Certainly the Board of Selectmen, the Facilities Committee, and quite honestly, the folks who live in and work in this building should just, you know, understand the rationale behind it. But there is very good historical basis for these recommendations.
Yeah, I'm not questioning them. Again, I just don't want it to come back.
No surprises. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't want it either because, gosh, I've been working in Southborough. I don't want to. Yeah, I wouldn't want to actually do anything that people would be shocked by. I hope they will be informed and excited by it.
Right.
Can I just a suggestion? First off, it's fascinating to see the paint analysis and to see what's under this lipstick coat of mortar. And I think just to sort of lay the groundwork, whoever's going to make the decision, I think it would be helpful if we perhaps reached out to my Southborough. Just with Lynn, the pictures that you had, specifically the paint analysis picture and the picture showing the original mortar lurking back behind. I think I think folks would find very interesting, and I think that would be a great way to, let people know that this interesting discovery has been made, and sort of generate some interest. I think that would be supportive of historical commission, select board, facilities, whoever ultimately for us ends up making the decision.
And it might be helpful even to socialize at the senior center.
Yeah.
May I
Not
suggest-
trying to add work or anything, but just to make sure, like, they're informed and just say, hey, FYI, this is what's happening.
May I
I think,
suggest?
I was just gonna say, I think with this, it might be good if Lynn, maybe we can do this presentation for the select board and
Mhm.
historical commission and see if there's any objection to going back to the original colors. I mean, because again, we don't want to get out there and have like 8 different people all giving 8 different recommendations. So I think it's good if we make a recommendation, which I would think, given the historic nature of the building and a historic project, should be the historic colors. And if there's a major objection, then we would have to rethink it. I mean, because honestly, looking at the original pictures, though they're in black and white, and looking at the color scheme, I believe it would actually be a very nice color scheme with that brick. But again, we'll get their input and see if there's an objection to it.
May I?
I'm sorry. I've just goofed things up a little bit, guys, so I have to get back to the
Can I
presentation.
jump in,
Freddie's been
Andrew?
trying
This is
to
Freddie.
interject.
Yeah, Freddie.
Just to the point of socializing it and doing some outreach, I think you want to find your champion first and find out all great ideas, but who's going to run with it? Because you can't just put stuff out there and not have someone in charge of it. So I think John's recommendation to give a presentation to the select board, who I believe this is their project, who put it on the warrant. Is that correct? So it's their project. And then this historical, whether it's a joint meeting or not, and hopefully they'll all be in agreement, and then maybe the historical commission would be the rightful owner of the socializing it proponent, working with you. But you don't want to just put information out there without someone in charge of who's going to respond, because you know how things start going. And you need somebody to be able to, be like the gatekeeper.
To Freddie's point, I do think a joint meeting would probably be best. That way, if there's any questions they'd have for each other, we can just address it in one meeting.
There's
Well,
got
shall
to
I-
be someone. There's got to be someone out there with computer-generated graphic experience who could just take a photo and overlay the colors. Honestly, in this day and age, that probably wouldn't be too hard. Even someone at Benjamin Moore might be able to help you out.
Actually, we could do it.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. We could do it. Have I got this back on the screen for you to see?
Yes.
You do, yeah.
Okay. Because I'm not finished with the paint colors, because there's another one too. We found that the windows were painted black. So this would be a dramatic transition. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And we certainly agree. I mean, when I was doing the library, yes, I did make an adjustment on the paint colors, but it was much more subtle. I went from white to, a kind of ivory buff color based on the paint analysis. This is certainly more dramatic. There's no question about it.
And so Lynn, just because you say that it looks like the original paint color for the windows, I mean, the mortar there, to me, looks not black.
Yeah, this was a later photograph, and I'll just go to it. It's right here.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Sean Willett. So our team consists of myself and my business partner, Doug Manley, and then Sean Willett, who is a new young principal in our firm, very enthusiastic about this project. And he went searching on eBay, and this came from a collection in, I think it was Minnesota. Who knows why it was there, but yes, this was found on eBay. And you can see the dark colored windows. You can see the cornice is actually, in terms, black and white photograph is always a little bit, you have to look at tones. And so you can see the tone, the tone of that cornice is much closer to the tone of the sandstone, which kind of reinforced that paint color was matching the sandstone. With the mortar here, it doesn't look so dark, but I think that that's the contrast itself. But this, we're not quite sure what of the date of this photograph. It would be great perhaps if somebody at the Historical Society or the Historical Commission can help us with this. But this is one of the kind of sources that you use to help guide these discussions.
Lynn, can I ask a quick question? Is there
Sure.
any way to know the original color of the door? I know the door is no longer in existence, but was there any trim work that had remnants of that color buried underneath?
That was so reworked. Unfortunately, it's all been replaced. If I were to guess, there's many shades of black, but it looks like it is in that kind of dark range. Now, with the door that we're doing now, it will continue to have glazed panels. So there will be clear glass in what are now the flat panels.
Right.
I think it's going to be quite stunning to do this, but I realize it will be a change. I just want to keep going a little bit on some of the challenges we're facing. One of the challenges we faced was the fact that the chimneys, while from the ground looked okay, when we got up to them, And in fact, in this photograph, you're seeing one of the bricks that was quite easily pulled out, and you see more of that black mortar. So we have a series of add alternates because we're all concerned about the bidding climate right now. We've seen, escalating prices in all areas, from labor to materials. Now, while we don't have a lot of materials coming in on this project, we certainly have some, and those prices have all gone much higher than what we experienced 3 years ago or 2 years ago or a year ago. So we are building in a series of add alternates, and one of them is actually the extensive rebuilding and repointing of 3 of the chimneys. One of them was okay, but the other 3 are not. We are also looking at the uppermost roof. This is a hip roof structure. The upper portion of it is virtually flat, and that has now a membrane roof on it. So as an add alternate, we're looking at that as an add. And then the last, although I think it's probably a pipe dream, is what it would cost to have real copper gutters rather than copper colored aluminum. So those are some add alternates that we're thinking about. We are concerned about the bidding climate. We want to get this to bid now for 2 reasons. A, fingers crossed, we're going to get bids that we can afford and we can move forward on. And that means that the windows can be worked, that work can be done in the early part of 2023 in terms of production. Then construction would start when the temperatures are good, and that would be, again, as I mentioned earlier, it could be in March, depends on the temperatures, or certainly April at the latest. By going to bid now and being able to award the contract in January, then we have 2 to 3 months for submittals, for production, for things to sort of get prepared for the construction itself. So that's the theory that we're working on. At this point, I want to thank you for listening to me too long tonight, and certainly welcome your questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lynn. Again, great presentation. I'll start with David because I see him first on my screen. Any questions?
I was going to ask about some of in the interim, while you're getting bids, and if you think that there is going to be a challenge of getting bids that are reasonable, is there any of the work that carries safety concerns that we'll need an interim solution until you can get this done the way it needs to be done, or has that already been accounted for?
Yeah, that's a good question, David. Thank you. You know, this work is unlike the St. Mark's project where we have dangerous masonry. You do not have that situation here. So I would say that this is work that is necessary and would be good to do now, but there's nothing that is perilous about any of this.
Even the chimneys?
Although I was just about, as soon as I said that, David, did you hear me actually bite my lower lip for a second?
That brick came right out kind of easily.
But we pushed it back in with some mud. Yeah, the chimney, the reason why we could keep them as an ad alternate is, quite honestly, if it's not possible to do with this project, that's a separate biddable project that could actually a return to community preservation or other funding sources to do. So, you know, while we're cautious about things, we don't see anything that is unstable. You know, it needs to be done, but it's not unstable.
So Lynn and John, keep in mind, I mean, we're doing a rehabilitation or preservation of the building now. I mean, if we do onesie twosies, if they come back onesie twosies later, say, oh, we didn't get to do this, I don't know how that's gonna, I mean, obviously we'd listen to it and everything, but in my mind, that would almost fall into maintenance at that point because we've already done a rehabilitation of the building. So,
well, if you didn't get to do these chimneys for financial reasons, isn't that something that could come back as a separate project?
Again, we've been advised before on the CPC, the coalition, that a rehabilitation is a bigger piece, not just onesie twosie things on a building that would be considered maintenance. It's a fine line we got to walk, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if, you know, I have to approach it when we get there, but a rehabilitation is what we're doing at this point, or, you know, preservation of the exterior of the building. You know, this is me speaking, just being on the CPC for a while. We'd have a tough time separating that from, quote, maintenance at that point.
I think a lot of it, Andrew, to begin with, we definitely have to go out to bid to find out where we're going to land with this right now to begin with. It may all fall within the range of what we got for funding. If not, we could possibly look at maybe being able to work with you. We can maybe pull capital in to help us out later on. Again, it's all going to come down to how the bidding goes. So we're trying not to get too far ahead of ourselves until we know where we stand with the bidding.
Yeah, I just want to set the stage so it's not an automatic.
No, I totally understand. I get it. Trust me. This one's kind of nerve-wracking because we thought we were in really good shape with this number. And as you all know, if it comes back horrific, there's nothing to say that we can't say we're not going to accept any bids right now, and we're going to go back out to bid later on.
Yeah.
We just have to be open to the idea that may not get done as fast as we want, but a little bit of patience can give you a superior product.
Okay. Sorry, David. Did you have more questions?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Ben? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Nothing further from me.
Kristen? You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm slow on the unmute. No, I'm good. Thank you.
No problem. Oh, you're good? Okay. Mark, any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, so I had a couple, Lynn, the windows, I heard you saying they have to be replaced. So the glass is going to be removed and it's going to be double paned and.
Right. We're doing thermal pane windows. Yes. So they are.
Do you know what's happening with that glass? Is there any value to that glass?
The complication with the glass is It's very hard to sort of remove that glass safely from windows with lead paint and most likely lead glazing. So there may be value actually to the person who takes them out and takes them as part of the contract. I don't think there's real financial value to getting that glass free of itself.
So I would, recommend too, that that's another thing you definitely want the historic commission to be aware of up front, that those windows are going. Because in the past, we've had historic commission members and chair say that, one of the most important parts of the building are the windows themselves. So just, as I'm just saying, not saying you can't do it, I'm just saying you want to make sure they're aware of what's coming to.
Right. I certainly have been in front of that board I remember these early Zoom meetings with the Historic District Commission and the Historical Commission. So I don't think this is an easy decision. It's one that is really made for function of the windows. It is, if you will, it's restarting the clock by doing new replica wood windows with thermal glazing. So it's a commitment to sustainability as well. But I hear you.
Yeah. And the other thing, John, I guess this might be more for you, but the add-ons or what were you calling it? Add alternatives,
Yeah.
or Lynn, you're referencing. Were those part of the original scope of the project?
I think
Yeah,
the
so-
big change was the chimneys, Lynn. Would you not agree?
Yeah, there's two things that have happened. We've added the chimneys, or we identified the chimneys and their need, and the gutters, because initially we thought that the gutters, aged, or we could see that that was verdigris colored copper. They looked fine from the ground with our binoculars. It's when we got on a lift and we're looking in the throat of the gutter that we said, oof, this is the time to deal with those gutters.
Okay.
So
And
that's
then-
an add, and that's what's put such a constraint on this budget, quite honestly, is adding that scope.
Okay. And then so switching to the black mortar, so in that case, does each brick have to be taken out and all the mortar behind it
No.
replaced?
No, it's a conventional repointing process where they now use a very small diamond blade cutting saw to open the joints. So the joints are prepared by removing the superficial mortar and cutting back to the depth of 2.5 times the width of the mortar. We like to get in far enough so that we can get pack the joints carefully. So yeah.
Okay. No, I was just curious. And then the other thing, just the preservation restriction, I've heard that there's movement, at least on the library one, through the grapevine. I didn't know if anything had happened with a preservation restriction for the townhouse.
Actually, one of the things we were waiting for, Andrew, is for the library to get theirs done. It seems to be working well up there, so we're probably going to follow the same avenue that they followed. And again, we want to get out to bid, get a contract settled so we know what we're preserving before we make a preservation restriction.
Okay. No,
So I think we at least have a nice avenue now, since they've done the trailblazing on this one. So it's kind of help everyone moving forward. Anyone that has to do one of these now, we kind of know a way to do it.
All right, great. So I think that's all I had. And so thank you. Appreciate the update. And then,
Okay.
I think, John, when, just let us know through email what it looks like in bids. I think the only other question we have, and I'm just going to tee this up for Brian because we're going to talk to him later, is going to be if it doesn't go out to bid, what's that mean from our funding aspect, or for the bond? Not that impacts you guys, but I'm just teeing it up for Brian. We got one more to talk about before we get to him, but plant that seed. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you,
Okay.
John.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Good
great
night
night.
now.
Night. All right, so let me see. So Paul Desmond, I'm gonna start with you. Promote to panelist. Oh, Lynn, you gotta stop sharing too, right? Let's see. Paul, did you come over?
I did. Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah, hold on one second here. Let me see how I get her back. All right. All right, there we go. All right, so Paul, who else should I bring over? Is it just you?
No, Keith Lavoy should be there and Becky Pellegrino.
Okay. Pellegrino. Okay.
And David Roman was here. I think he had to drop earlier, but
Yeah, I don't see him.
okay.
All right. Let's see. So review project application Algonquin Regional High School complex project. So let's see. I think I don't know if you guys saw, we went through the project last time. We went through and asked the Community Preservation Coalition to look at, you know, everything that was requested and try to help us determine what we could fund and what we couldn't. I believe Freddie got a response back late today. And then I'm
was
not sure,
joint.
did you guys reach out too?
It was
We
a
did.
joint response.
Rebecca Pellegrino did on behalf of the district.
Okay. So to be honest, I haven't had a time to review that yet. Freddie, I don't know, you want to give an update on that? Did you talk to Stuart?
No, not yet. The coalition is very busy right now with state match and surplus funds and communities coming on board. So trying to get us the most money they can for the match. He wrote I inquired, but you had also inquired. Was it you, Rebecca? So the email response came at like 5:38 about, right? This evening, and Rebecca, you were on it as well. So we haven't had a chance to go through it. There's some general, can fund this, can't, and then some that's sort of like by the CPC to decide. I emailed that out, forwarded it to the rest of the committee right before this meeting, so they haven't had a chance to look at it. I briefly discussed with Andrew, and what I think maybe an approach, and then of course you can update from the questions we sent you from our last meeting, but I was thinking an approach might be for you to, having read that, to go through and identify what you thought the CPC should pay for based on your understanding of what's allowable. And then the CPC could look at that and, you know, make their own determination if that met the criteria they believe we're allowed to fund. And it would be a streamlined approach than everyone saying, oh, this, not that. Like, let you decide, because there's plenty there to pay for, right? That's not part of the non-allowed uses. And I just thought that would be a better approach to handle that part of it. If you
And
agree.
if I can just mention that the items that we had actually looked through were not any of the items that Stuart had identified as potentially not being eligible. So we really looked at those items that would be a benefit to the community and that we felt really fit the, I guess, the CPC's commission because we were afraid of the bleachers, and we just weren't sure about, we knew that the turf field would not be eligible. And so we really focused on those things that were for the community benefit.
Yeah, Andrew, and the rest of the committee, if we could, we have a short presentation that I think will bring everybody up to speed on where we are with the project, what we want to do, what our goals are. And we did break out what we think is eligible for CPC funding.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Also, I just noticed Jason Malinowski is in the attendee room, and if you could promote him as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Andrew, so I'll gladly get things started. We do have a few short slides. A part of it is a slight introduction, a little overview of where we are, a look at current conditions, and then Becky did do a deeper analysis of the financials, so we can really lay it out and hopefully give a clearer picture to the committee of where we are and what we're looking to do. So, if that would be okay with you, I'd like to share my screen.
Yep, go for it. Thank you.
Hey, Jason.
Jason, just so I'm clear, are you representing capital on this, or are you?
I've been assisting the Paul and the Athletic Complex Committee, but with a view towards capital, given I'll call it the unique funding situation that's going to be in front of this project, depending upon, regardless of where you all land from a CPC perspective. You've got two towns involved,
Right.
so they're obviously soliciting the same sort of discussion in Northborough as well.
Okay. No, I just trying to make sure I'm clear where your involvement is on this, and I'm glad you're part of it. So thank you.
No, it's been great to have Jason's insight on it, and we are working a parallel system with Northborough as well, based on the regional agreement, which is something that Becky will get into once we get down to the financial breakdown.
Okay.
So first off, just a short introduction. I'm Keith Lavoie, the Assistant Superintendent of Operations for the district, joined by Rebecca Pellegrino, who is our Director of Finance for the school system. Paul Desmond is with us this evening, and Dave Roman had to step off, but they are both the chairs, the community representative chairs of for the building committee related to this project. Paul represents Southborough and is on the regional school committee, and David is a community member from Northborough that has been very active in athletics and other programs throughout the community. We also have been in partnership with Gale Associates. They are the engineering firm that has helped us and has really steered us in our way of our project management and related to this, and the building of a schematic design, which is something that we conducted last year and has yielded us good estimates about where we are and where we're going to go. Unfortunately, Gale could not be here this evening to talk about the detail of it, and I'm going to do my very best to provide that substitution. So beyond an overview of what we're looking to do, like I said, Becky will provide a breakdown, and intermixed in our presentation this evening is the answer to the questions that Freddie had forwarded to us. I want to thank Freddie for that communication, and it did steer this presentation itself. So to review the current conditions, the three areas of the Algonquin Athletic Complex that I'd like to highlight this evening is first the tennis courts. The tennis courts were installed or were renovated as part of the 2004 renovation to Algonquin Regional High School. As you can see here, there has been significant cracking that has developed in its own almost 20-year history. And it has already been resurfaced, but it is well beyond its years of life expectancy. Pavement in New England doesn't last that long, and this is a true indication of that. The middle column is more about the stadium field. This is a picture that's being taken from the bleachers themselves. Just so the committee is aware, this field was not renovated as part of the 2004 renovation to the whole campus. This particular part of the field was only top dressed and overseeded. The bleachers themselves, which came up very quickly during our review of the campus, are not ADA compliant and are original to the 1994 build. And certainly this is something that has come up over years. We wanted to make sure we preserve the integrity of this natural grass field, so it has not been able to accommodate all the teams or groups that would like to use it. So it has been restricted in nature. Another part of the stadium field that we want to highlight is the lighting. It is also original to a 1994 build. and is insufficient and does not, it certainly does not meet new safety standards that have been applied. And I will say that the what we have seen so far from Gale Associates about the technology and the updated lighting is quite impressive, and it will really be a huge benefit if we're able to move forward. And certainly, like I mentioned earlier, our proposal does include having a synthetic field for this stadium field, which would definitely maximize our ability to use it in all facets of not only Algonquin world, but the community at large. The right column shares the current conditions of the track. That was also installed in 1994. It has undergone numerous patching attempts, and those have unfortunately failed in many places. And as you can see from this picture, there is puddling. Due to its poor conditions, we are not able to host any of the major MIAA track meets that we would like to. And that's certainly been a deficit of the campus itself. And like all type of pavement in this sort of conditions, it's well beyond its life expectancy. So that is kind of the current conditions of where we are. And before I jump to our goals and the master plan for what we're trying to do, does anyone have any questions about the current conditions?
Yeah, Keith, I was wondering for the tennis courts, have
Yes.
they been trying to patch or any upkeep?
Yes, multiple crack solutions have been attempted and upkeep has been tried. It has actually been resurfaced since its original construction, and it's already deteriorated to this point, and that's a relatively current picture right there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other member have a question about the current conditions?
Keith, yeah, it's Kristen Laval. I have a question just on the track. We just in recent years went through the same thing with our Troutier track. So just curious, in 1994, then it sounds like there was no plan, because we're well beyond when resurfacing should have been scheduled and budgeted for. So it just sounds like that wasn't the case.
Yeah, that is true. I think there have been attempts prior to now. We have been discussing this project for, I think Paul would attest, pretty much almost a decade. That has been part of that conversation ever since. So there have been different attempts, even most recently, right at the beginning of the pandemic. We tried to do some more patching with the more severe areas. And I can say even those have withdrawn and let go a little bit to make for unsafe conditions. So similarly, the installation of this track in 1994 was about 5 years earlier than the Troutier track at Troutier Middle School in Southborough.
So obviously I have questions when it comes to the proposed plan, but I'll hold on to them.
Sure. Are there any other questions? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, the current conditions, does that impact your ability to compete with other schools?
It has. So for the use of the stadium field itself, it has not. We are able to fulfill our football, lacrosse, soccer, and other obligations with that. I would say that the condition of the track has interfered with our ability to compete openly. There have been certain schools throughout the region that have been unwilling to run on our track, and that has only been in recent years. So that, I would say, only really began in earnest at the probably in the middle of the pandemic, believe it or not, probably 2021.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So Keith, I heard you use the word stadium.
Yes. It's for effect, Andrew. No, I'm joking. What's your question?
No, it's just, I think there's a difference for the CPC funding, if it's compared to stands or a stadium.
Yes, it is more stands. We're using the stadium because of the community nature of what the site will be. But honestly, the footprint of where, and I'll show an aerial view shortly of what the master plan would be, and that'll give you an idea. We're not building Gillette. It is far more in line with what you would see now. In fact, the capacity of the bleachers themselves is going to be unchanged.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions about the current conditions? Okay, I'll bump down. So for the goals for the project, obviously want to create a safe environment for students and staff to learn and compete. That's paramount. We want to create additional recreation opportunities for students and residents, specifically looking at the track itself. We do have a large community impact for the track for running and walking and the tennis courts. And that is something that Becky mentioned earlier in the opening, and we will follow up with that when we do the breakdown of the finances. The other unique thing we're trying to do is genuinely make it a community center and create a space for the performing arts, which would include an amphitheater, which is very interesting position, so that you can imagine it can really create a community atmosphere for different types of performing arts events. We definitely want to engage both Northborough and Southborough Recreation on how best to utilize the space with greater frequency. That is done slightly now by different groups, especially the youth sports that are both in Northborough and Southborough and are adjoined. They are able to use it, but in a limited capacity due to the need of needing to rest the grass fields. And that's something that will absolutely be expanded with the addition of the turf. And like I mentioned, youth sports. I think both communities are clamoring for additional space, and with the ability to use the synthetic turf on both what I call the stadium field and the multi-purpose field will generate that type of access. So that's something we're really looking forward to. So the master plan, and this is what I was getting to, Andrew, just so you get an idea of the scope and scale of what we're trying to do. This is a rendering that was done by Gale Associates for us. It really doesn't change the current footprint that exists. There isn't an expansion of what we currently have now involved in this. But certainly, as you can see from the bulleted items and the highlighted items in the image, these are the things that we would be replacing, which includes the track. It would be going down to the very foundation of the trap and be a complete rebuild, not just a resurfacing. So like you mentioned earlier, Kristen, the track at Trottier was kind of like what you would see more on our roadways, like a milling and then a top coat and then a synthetic coat put on top. This is a full replacement, which would get down to the base, which is a foot and I think 1.5 or 2 feet deep below. Obviously replacing the grass field that exists now with a synthetic turf surface, which is highlighted there. The grandstand, a key element is as soon as we touch the grandstand, we want to make sure that it is ADA compliant. And you can kind of see here from the draft rendering, the access points and the ramping that would be required. There's a very small footprint here, and we're really able to utilize every square inch of that to make it ADA compliant. So a real credit to Gale and their team for making sure that we hit all those marks and really make this space accessible for all. LED lighting, like I mentioned before, the technology is extraordinary, and some of the images that we're seeing about the lighting from other school districts that have done this has been extraordinary. And even beyond the track itself, the lighting practically goes to black, whereas now many of the lights are shining in a variety of different directions. We do plan to take care of the neighbors that are adjacent to the field and update them on the progress, but really their experience is going to be far improved with the new LED lights that we're proposing. We're referencing the field that is to the east as the multi-purpose field, also known as the JFEV field. This would also be a synthetic surface field that would have lighting, which would really expand the capabilities of this particular part of the campus. The tennis courts would be there would be no expansion to this. It would simply be a replacement of what we have now. And as much of the material that is part of the tennis courts and its underroots of asphalt and others will be repurposed for the use of the new surface. So really excited about the recycling benefits of the new technology related there. And here I did want to point out, can you see my cursor? Andrew, can you see my cursor?
Yep.
So the location of the amphitheater is pretty exciting. This is the JV baseball field. This is the recommended position of the amphitheater. And as you can kind of imagine, this provides a lot of grass area for community events, small and large, and even school events that could be done with an outdoor venue. So really looking forward to seeing what type of creative options we have there. And you can even see in a little dark, this would also be accessible and ADA compliant. So all the spaces that we touch, whether they are the tennis courts, the varsity field or the multi-purpose field, are going to have pathways throughout that would be ADA accessible and compliant. So that's a really exciting benefit. Right now, it's pretty good. We get to most square inches of the facility, but this is simply going to enhance that, which is a definite thing that we wanted to provide. So now I at this time, like I'll pause again to see if there's any questions about the master plan, connecting some of the history of the different spaces with what we're proposing, and then Becky will take over and share the background or the breakdown of finances.
Keith, just one question. The tennis courts, are they just straight tennis courts or are they pickleball too, or?
Good question. We are actually researching that and the potential. The only one of the questions we have is we want to make sure that if we do line those spaces for pickleball, do we undo any benefits of hosting an MIAA event? So Mike Masserino, the athletic director at Algonquin, is researching that right now.
Great, thank you.
But it does have the potential. Certainly the space is there, and it would be something that we would entertain as long as we're not undoing other benefits that we would gain.
Thanks.
Any other questions about the master plan itself? Excellent. All right, Becky, you're up.
Thank you, Keith. So as Keith mentioned, we have been working closely with Gale Associates, and within the past week or so, they did provide us with their 90% design cost estimate. As part of that design cost estimate, we did ask them, based on their prior experience with working with other communities, to identify those areas that they felt may potentially be eligible for CPC funding and those areas that may not be eligible. We knew right off the bat that the synthetic turf fields would not be eligible. And these projections, again, were done by Gale prior to receiving the email that we had gotten earlier this evening from Stuart. So based on their projections, they were estimating that approximately $5 million of the total cost of this project, with a 20% contingency of an additional $1 million, for a total of $6 million, may be eligible for CPC funding. And that 1.5 million may potentially be not eligible for CPC funding. Those areas that are eligible, they are thinking about the tennis courts right off the bat, the site work and the demolition work that needs to be done, and then the ancillary items at the track and the football field, as well as the JV football field. Next slide, Keith. So the total estimated project cost for this project is $7.5 million. We are a regional school district, and as part of our regional agreement, the debt assessment to each of the two communities is based on the enrollment as of October 1st. And we do take the previous 4 years, and an average of that when we determine the percentage breakdown that Northborough and Southborough would be responsible for. So really the town meeting and capital warrants are the only funding mechanism that we have for projects like this. The school committee does not have a capital fund reserve built up. So the only way that we could initiate a project like this is to put this on a town meeting warrant in both communities. So the Northborough portion would be 62.33% based on those enrollment numbers, and Southborough's percentage would be 37.67%. So breaking down the total project cost, Southborough's portion would be $2,825,745. And again, just based on those preliminary estimates, the CPC eligible portion would be $2,260,496. We are revising the request that we had originally put into the CPC of Southborough. And so we are revising that to be $745,963.98, which would be 33% of what we determined to be potentially CPC eligible funding. Keith, do you want to go on to the next slide?
Sure.
So we've taken this even further. So we are requesting from both communities CPC funding totaling $1,980,000. And the areas that we have identified for that CPC funding would be the reconstruction of the track, the tennis courts, the amphitheater that Keith had mentioned, as well as the lighting and the walkways that are surrounding those three components of the project. Again, as Keith said, we did determine that those areas really are the ones that the community members of both Northborough and Southborough can take advantage of, whether it be the track and walking and running, playing tennis, or hopefully taking in a great performance on the amphitheater. And again, I have broken down for the committee each of those components and what the Southborough portion would be based on the CPC funding request. So we are looking at $208,000 for the track reconstruction, $278,000 for the lighting and walkways, $213,000 for the tennis courts, and then just about $46,000 for the amphitheater. And I welcome any questions on the funding and the breakdowns.
Does the fund, hey, it's Kristen. Does the funding incorporate future costs to make sure that we don't allow the track, for example, to get into the same shape that it got into? Like there's a regular schedule in which we should be resurfacing it. Likewise with the turf, there's a regular schedule in which case you should be replacing that. Do these costs incorporate some of that?
So these costs do not, but we as a district do have a plan to make sure that this does not happen again. We are looking at the potential revenue for field rentals, and we will be able to utilize those funds and put those back into the maintenance of the field and of the tennis courts.
Okay, yeah, very similar to our 9/11 strategy in Southborough.
Yes,
correct.
Rebecca, just so I'm clear, like, I mean, I haven't gone over there, but I assume the question would come up at town meeting that anyone, if we're using CPC funds, anyone from Southborough could go over and use the tennis courts or the fields or the track.
absolutely. They can now.
Yeah. I said I haven't done it, so it's like, just want to make sure it's out there. That's all.
And Andrew, to that point, I think we will be collaborating closely with Recreation on how access can be given and certainly supported and advertised and things of those natures. And we're actually looking to creative ways on how to, give people that access, whether we, have the tennis courts locked and it's then by permission granted that it's, given access. Right now, it is not a locked facility and it is used quite frequently by the community. So I only know that that's going to grow.
Yeah, is that limited to only when school's not in session or?
Correct.
Okay.
Sometimes people get out there for a match or two, but we try to limit it as much as possible.
So Jason, I assume that you are very interested in what we're able to fund because otherwise capital is going to make the recommendation to fund the rest of it for town meeting?
Yeah, I mean, capital will make a recommendation regardless of whether you do 0, 33% or 100% of the CPC eligible items, just on the overall project. But I do think, given the complications here in terms of funding sources and looking out, I think it's worth, collaborating, knowing the pressure that you already have from the townhouse project and the bond that will be issued there, what this would look like, and then how that then factors into what the general fund would look like with any residual.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else from the CPC?
I'm sorry if I missed this. Has the Northborough CPC, has this presentation been given to them? And I'm sorry if I missed that.
No, you did not. You are first. And we are, Superintendent Martineau is, we have submitted an application to Northborough for the value indicated, and I'm imagining that I will be doing a very similar presentation with them.
Great, thank you.
I hope our questions make it really easy for you.
Well, that's
guys.
what I'm hoping for, Andrew. You're doing good so far. Becky's recording it and taking notes, so we're good to go.
Oh, that's great. Mark, you have any questions? Go. Do we lose Mark? Oh, hold on. Somehow he went back to a participant. Mark, you there?
I was trying to unmuting myself. Thank you.
Sorry, did you have any questions?
But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I look at Northborough and their wonderful complex on Route 135. Keith, is there a real appetite this in Northborough, or is this a little too early to discuss that?
We're sensing that there certainly is an appetite for the fields themselves. We are hearing that pretty loud and clear. The tennis courts, because of their condition and certainly with the popularity of pickleball, I'm glad that came up. It is certainly a consideration. We are hearing that there is more interest in even expanding courts and having more courts available, because there are ones not only on 135, but also in Westboro, I believe, right at the intersection of Route 9 and Lyman Street. So I think a combination of that, we are seeing it pretty widespread. And I know Southborough is doing pickleball courts down on the Finn campus. So it just seems to be exploding, and we are hearing more and more. And when we have done our preliminary outreach on this, and it has been preliminary, Paul's done some nice work out on the different community days, whether it's Alpa Fest in Northborough or Heritage Day in Southborough. We are hearing that their interest in all corners of this project, and it has come forth that tennis courts is included in that interest.
Yeah, if I could,
Thank you.
I could jump onto that. As Keith said, we spent some time at Apple Fest in Northborough and Heritage Day in Southborough, just trying to get out the word on this, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive from everyone I've talked to, except for the one guy who told me that, well, it was fine in 1974 when I graduated, but other than that, people are excited about it. So.
Thanks. I'm good.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mark.
Ben? Mark, if you can mute, I think when you were off mute, you had some feedback. Thanks.
No specific questions for the Algonquin team. I'm looking forward to our discussion of our budget, just so I can wrap my head around our current bonding capacity and what that's gonna look like.
Great.
But thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
David?
I don't have any additional questions beyond what's been presented. I was going to ask about the pickleball, but that was already asked and answered, so I'm good.
Excellent. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you guys off. Was that the end of the presentation?
Right, Becky, it is. I think that's the final slide.
Yes.
Is it okay? Can you guys email that to us?
That's what I was thinking. I thought it would be very helpful for you to have that breakdown. Should we send it to Freddie and you, Andrew?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
That'd be perfect.
I'll do that.
It's Kristen. Can we be made aware when you're going to be presenting to the Northborough CPC? I assume we can call in actually, I don't even know the rules. Can we call in and listen or no?
I don't know if it's going to be virtual or in person, but we can certainly share that information once it's been scheduled.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Great presentation, great prep. You definitely got all those questions. You hit on all of them. We still have a little bit more homework on this, and it's going to be a little while as we go through this. But
Understood.
looking forward to working with you all to come up with the appropriate recommendation for the town. So thank you, and looking forward to talking to you soon.
Yep, we are as well. And if any other questions pop up, certainly I'll share the presentation now. And we will also share this with Superintendent Martineau.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. So next we have Mr. Valentine. Ryan, how are you?
How are you? Can you hear me?
I can. Sorry, keeping you up so late.
Oh my God, I'm ready for bed.
So appreciate you attending. I know that we've tried a number of times to get this, but looking for an update on the CPA accounts and investment strategy. I know when we first were talking about this, we had one of the investment guys in, and there was I think we had a large gain in there was an increase in the funds that we weren't anticipating. We'll put it that way. So if you could give us an update of where things are at, that would be great.
Yes, I can. So, yes, we had FY21 a lot of happiness. It was a $500,000, over $500,000 of a gain in the account, and we were all cheering and happy. And of course, if you've looked at your 401k in the past few months, year, it's the opposite. So we lost in FY22. We basically lost, and it's actually kind of funny in a sick way that we almost lost the exact amount that we gained in FY21. So we lost $500,000 in FY22. Through FY23 through September, we're about 100,000 down. I will say, to put it in perspective, every single town and municipality is going through the same thing. You're going through the same thing if you're a 401k and a retirement fund. So this happens occasionally. It's not frequently. It's basically 2008. The Black Friday of 1987. The stock market crash of the 20s, things like that. There's been periods where we've gone really, there's been a lot of volatility, and it makes people nervous. But I guess my point is that this is normal in cycles, and most cycles, almost all cycles actually, return to a positive market swing eventually. So as far as the investments are concerned, it looks ugly right now. There's no doubt about it. But I think, if we wait 6 months, a year to 2 years at the max, traditionally, we'll come back and we'll make up all those losses. The only problem is with the CPA is if we continue with the losses for enough period of time, it may impact county-wise how we can fund projects. So we obviously give an estimate of earnings every year, and it's usually consistent. Really is somewhat not an issue, but this is like a one-off or like I said, it happens once in a long time, where things are a little bit more extreme. And if they keep on extreme for another year or two, accounting wise, it could be a problem with funding projects. You know, you just listen to the recreation project, you know, they're asking for a very worthy project. But if we, you know, if we lose another $500,000 in the next year, that's a problem. You know, so I think, you know, I don't have the answers tonight, but what I would say is, you know, we need to keep an eye on this. You know, FY21 and FY22, we were about a zero earnings. We earned $500,000, we lost $500,000. This year, we're down about $125,000. It's not panic time, but if it continues in this manner, it just may mean we need to make adjustments to some of these projects. So I can't get into the weeds too much because I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that at some point, you know, myself and maybe Carl, the town council, maybe even a couple months, need to speak with the chairman and Freddie about the returns and what it means in county. Because it's a little different.
Brian, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Okay, so I just was saying that maybe in the next few months we should meet as far as the chairman and Freddie and kind of look at what we're looking at. Because, you know, cash wise and accounting wise are two different things. And it's a concept that's hard to understand, but it's if we keep losing money on the market value, we may have an issue with funding projects. So I know John has.
Hold on, when you say funding projects, are you saying funding existing projects that we've already bonded or funding new projects?
No, I would think it's more new projects. You know, you have a $700,000 ask in front of you for the schools. That's a lot of money. And again, I can't answer this tonight because the timing could be very squishy. Bonds, you can put them out several years. You don't have to, you know, permanently bond them right away. So kind of get away with small costs at first, but you know, a year or 2 or 3 out, you're going to permanently bond it, and then you're going to have the cost of it, like a mortgage. So I just think we need to keep an eye on this. And again, we need to, you know, Andrew, we need to sit down with you and Freddie and kind of go through more of a weedy type meeting where we can kind of go through this and figure it out. We didn't know the full cost of the Algonquin Recreation Project. It's a work in progress, and you know, so we're kind of balancing some things here on the fly.
So
it's not good. I'm not going to pretend that it's good, but I will definitely say that in the long run, we always make out with these things. The stock market will come back, absolutely will. The problem is timing in the next year or two, and it just may be a point where we just need to, whether we push it into short-term loans, where you get a lower interest rate and you can push it off, but you know, basically pushing off the mortgage a couple of years. We may have to do that. I don't know. I don't know yet. I don't have enough information, but.
Well, Brian, can you help me understand then? Like, I mean, I always thought, you know, what we had in the account, I didn't, you know, until we had that meeting a few months back where the investment manager for everything talked to us. I didn't realize that the CPC funds were being invested in such volatile assets.
Sure. So let me give a quick, I'll be very quick, view of, so basically there's a few buckets of funds. We have the general fund, which is all our normal receipts of building permits, transfer station stickers, real estate taxes. They get put in like a money market account. And again, this is by state law. The state does not allow us to invest in long-term, equities or bonds for those type of funds, because they figure you need to use them on a daily basis, and we do. However, there are exceptions, and the basic exceptions are trust funds, CPA funds, and OPEB funds. OPEB funds are other employment benefits. They're retiree funds, actually. So OPEB is easy. It's not going to be used for a long time, so they're invested in the stock market. Trust funds, very similar. Not a lot of money goes out of it, and they're invested in stock market and bond funds, blah, blah, blah. CPA funds are a little bit of a gray area. The only reason I say it is because they're long-term funds, but they're not. They can be used, they can be invested by state law in equity funds. And they usually, so the South Road, we usually have between $2 to $3+ million in residual funds at any one time of just sitting there. And it's nothing wrong with that. It's just that because projects are being proposed, being held, you have housing funds that are sitting there, all those buckets that aren't being used. That's cash that's just sitting there. And it's been very consistent since I've been here. So it makes sense to invest them in the stock market, equities, and bonds to try to make some money long term. Perfectly correct. The problem is when you have losses for a consistent time.
When's the first time it got moved into the stock market? Do you know?
Yeah, it was pretty much maybe a year or two after we did the we enacted the CPA fund. So and again, since then we've never, except 2008 when we had that dip, and I think because it was a new fund, it didn't really matter. But we never had an issue with it, and it's just been over time we've earned money, more than we would have otherwise. But my thought now is, with this market downturn, is if the CPC is going to authorize, projects having a high cash flow, then we need to look at maybe changing the makeup of the fund, because trust funds and stocks and bonds make sense if you're in the long term. But if you have a low cash flow, then you need to, or if you have a high cash flow, I should say, you need to have that cash as accessible. And right now, if we wanted all the cash in our account, we'd be challenged because of we'd have to realize a lot of losses, which we wouldn't do. Just like your 401k. It's no different than your 401k. If you went out right now and said, I'm going to, cash out my 401k, you'd have a huge loss.
I think the difference though is that we always anticipate that, the funds that we put forth to town meeting, that we're going to have those available to us and for another project, because we don't know what project's coming down the pike. So I totally agree with you and understand that, when things are good, market's going up, why we never ask this question. until we saw $500,000 that all of a sudden we're like, whoa, what's going on here? But now, especially hearing that we've, lost $500,000 that we thought we had before, so then what do we actually have now to think about projects? And I think Freddie worked either with you or with Carla recently to get that, but I think we thought there was almost $1 million of available funds, and now it sounds like it's not there.
That's that, I don't disagree with you. And I would say that, again, over the long term, if you're talking 10, 20, 30 years, there's no doubt you are better off in a stock portfolio mixed with bonds. You're going to make money. You're going to make a lot more money than you do with a money market.
Totally understand, but I mean, like I said, that these are funds that we could, and we almost have completely depleted the fund.
Yep. Yep. So my thought is now is, I guess the bottom line is, we can't realize these losses right now. It would be stupid. It would be silly. That's not an option. We have to wait till the market comes back. At that point, I'm willing to entertain a conversation. Should we be in a more fluid market where we're invested in CDs, money markets, bonds, treasuries that are a little more protected against the volatility of the stock market? And happy to have that conversation, but I would be, right now is not the time. We just can't, if you want to cash out the account right now, we'd be losing a ton of money. So
what was our cost basis?
Well, we made a 560,000 in 21, lost 569,000 in 22, which is basically a push. But through September of 22, we're down 125,000. That's not a panic mode, but if it continues to be, if we end up 569,000 at the end of 6 of 23, that's a problem. I'm not going to lie, that's a problem. So again, not to get too greedy, I think we need to sit down at some point and kind of go through the numbers.
And Brian, just so we're clear, so are there other investments of the town that are tied with what we're invested in? And like, who is it? Just you who's making these decisions, or like I'm curious because like I know you and I have never had this conversation before about what it should be invested in. Like, I'm just curious, was there, like, did the selectmen know? Because my mind is racing thinking, okay, if we don't have enough to cover our bills or everything, then it's still the responsibility of the town. Then it's going to have to go to the town to say, oh, we got to, raise and appropriate this money to pay XYZ. And, how are we going to explain that?
So, yes. So like I said, the OPEB and the trust funds are the same sort of theory. They are not as exposed as much because of the nature of their business. CPA fund is a little more exposed, again, because of their project nature. And again, it's never been an issue because it's never been this volatile, the market. So I would say that, I don't think it will get to the point that we need to offset money with town money or anything like that. As a cash basis, we have plenty of money, but it's an accounting problem. So I think we need to, the bottom line is I think we need to take the next few months, keep an eye on it. Carla, the town accountant, and myself would probably have to sit with you, Andrew, and Freddie, and just at some point, whether it's in the next month or two, go through these numbers and figure out what they mean. Especially with this recreation project. I'm a little worried about this recreation project. I just want to make sure that you guys have enough funding to, if you support that, to go forward with it.
Yeah, Ben, you got a question?
So, yes, please. Although, you know what, Freddie had her hand up first.
Okay.
Freddie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Brian. Thank you for coming in. That seat hot? Challenging conversation, and I appreciate you wanting to meet with Andrew and I to go into more detail so we don't have 1,000 questions when we don't really know what we're talking about here, as well as if we had that long conversation. But because we've never experienced this in almost 20 years of CPA, it's making me rethink how we're looking at the budget now. And typically, we have accounts with a certain dollar value associated with them.
I can hear.
What? What did Mark say?
Couldn't hear.
Is anyone else having feedback problems? Because I can hear a fraction of what's being said here.
I can hear okay.
I can hear pretty well.
I can hear okay.
Yeah, I can hear fine.
When you put your sound on, we got feedback here, so sorry.
I'll have to rewatch the video, I guess. Thanks.
Sorry. So if we have and when we get to the budget sheet, I prepared just a real, what am I calling it? It's a estimate of a draft, because there's so many numbers we don't know, not counting what you're just telling us now, right? So when we had in the fall, usually the town accountant would supply a balance in the general unreserved fund, or the CPA fund is what we call it now. And then we have one other account, all this 10% set asides if there's remaining funds in there, plus we put aside I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's another fund we have for the unreserved fund, we used to call it. So budgeted reserve funds, right? So we have those totals, and that's what we fund projects out of. Are you telling me that the dollar amount in there is fluid and may not be there for us to fund the projects?
It's possible, if I understand your question correctly.
You know what,
again,
it'd be easier if, I think, is the next topic, Andrew, the budget?
It is. Yep.
Let Brian, can you stay just for a little bit of that? I can ask the question easier when you look at the spreadsheet, and I think everyone will understand where we're at right now without going into the weeds.
Yeah.
Andrew and I will have that conversation, but just a quick question so we know what we're dealing with, and I'll let Benjamin ask his question now.
Well, just before Ben does, I mean, when we meet Brian, I'd like to have Ben there too, as vice chair. If Ben,
I'd love to be there.
So just so people don't think it's me as a chair making decisions. So, okay, thanks. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, oh, no, just a couple of quick questions. This is, first, I'm glad we're starting to get a view sort of behind the curtain. And frankly, that I think a lot of us didn't really know that the curtain kind of existed and that there was anything back there. So it's good that we're getting to learn a little bit of the nuts and bolts about it. I'm just trying to sort out in my mind how this impacts, or could potentially impact, I should say. I know you can't predict the future here, but our bonding capacity, because in my limited understanding of that is that was driven by the amount that we receive from the CPA surcharge on property taxes, and actually that alone in our bonding capacity is something like 80% of that. But now I'm starting to understand that may not be as ironclad an assurance as I once thought. That may in fact be impacted if the investments decline in value. We may have to this 80% of our funding may not be our bonding capacity. Is that correct?
It's yes.
Okay.
It's yes, you're right. So basically, and again, I don't want to make this confusing, but so you know, at the end of FY21, we had that great year. You know, we're by fiscal year, so June 30th is our sort of drop dead date. So June 30th, we looked awesome, right? The fund balance in the CPA. Forget about buckets and all that. The fund balance was great. It increased, oh my God, $500,000 or more from all this just investment income. The problem is at the end of FY22, it now all of a sudden switches back to, okay, now you're, you know, the DOR says now we're 566,000 down. Basically, we've lost all that money that we had at the end of FY21. The disconnect is you're making decisions in FY21 that, you know, are for FY22, but you don't know what the FY22 results are. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and it's not that, you know, no one's doing anything wrong. It's just we have this disconnect between timing differences of what, you know, what cash we have available. So again, FY20 at the end of FY22, great. We, you know, the last 2 years have been zero. We basically hit zero on this. But now FY23, we're down another 125,000. So
okay.
through September 30th.
Okay,
So,
I think I'm starting to understand that
Yeah.
because of the decrease in the fund, we may end up in a situation where we have obligations we've already committed to fund that would have to that would sort of necessarily decrease our ability to commit more future funds to bonds. So okay, I had a couple of other questions, and I don't want to get too deeply into the details. So I look forward to if the four of us can sit down, I'll assault you with the questions then. But thank you for taking the time to come in tonight. It's
and you're spot on. So yes, that's a problem.
Okay, thank you.
For any, I think it would be best to just look at the budget, and it might make some of the questions more understandable, because what you're talking about now, Brian, some of the questions might relate to the spreadsheet we have.
Yes.
Especially for Kristen, who's first night tonight, so.
Yeah, you got a good one tonight, Kristen.
Was there?
Yeah, I'm trying to digest it.
So if there's nothing else on this from you, Brian, I'd like to ask if Andrew can bring up the spreadsheet that I emailed out.
Sure.
Is that all right with everyone, with the chair?
Yeah, hold on, let me see if I can find it.
And I'm going to give a quick run through of what's on the spreadsheet so that it refreshes people's memory and I'm not going into great detail in the weeds, but there's a couple of components that go into how we create our budget. And Kristen, I'll sit down with you another time and tell you in detail so you can understand better.
All right, thank you.
Is that the bonding one?
No, I just sent the bonding one out just now. The other one came out earlier. It said, pretty sure it went out.
Public record.
CPC budget yesterday. I sent it to you,
Okay.
and it went to the full committee.
Yep, yep. Hold
So
on.
those that want to sing along at home, you can. Brian didn't leave, did he?
No, I don't think so.
Am I the only one not seeing him anymore?
I don't see him either. He's not under the attendees either.
Well, I didn't touch him.
No, I didn't think you did. Maybe he didn't understand we wanted to go over some of this with him. So I'll start. This here is how we make our budget every year. And we have a surcharge that we estimate, and we estimate what we're going to get in this state match for fiscal year 24, which begins in July 1st of 2023. However, it's based on what we collected in surcharge for fiscal year 2022. Would saying my dates wrong. Fiscal year 23, we're in now. We base the budget for 24 on what we got for surcharges this current fiscal year, which we don't know yet because there's some tax rate stuff going on right now. And when we have that finalized, we'll have a better idea. That's why I say this is an estimate. It's really very vague. But what we do is we know historically how much the surcharge goes up every year, and we use that percentage. And I talk it over with Brian, and he thinks it's going to be a 4% increase next year. The problem is I don't know what 4% over what. We don't know how much this year's surcharge is. So, and we don't know anything about the state match until November. So the earlier timing of town meeting in March instead of, used to be in April, was it? Really makes this very difficult. And the Department of Revenue doesn't issue their estimates. So I'm saying that just so that you know, if you look here under estimated budget, this is a real big estimate with unknowns, okay? But I came up with, we will be getting between the surcharge and the state match, an estimate of $500,000. And then out of that, we put into the different required, we call them the buckets for the identified uses of CPA. We have, this is legally required. We put that money aside and we put 5% into admin. And this here, it's the budgeted reserves down there. So after we take the estimated budget, put everything into the reserves that we're required to do, we have $326,000 left. $212, right? So that's green, you can see. So I color coded this to make it a little bit easier. You can see the blue, how I came up with it, and then it carries over to the budget. And down here, the beige carries over to the budget. And now this green is going to carry over to the next page. So this is the account balances and what I was hoping to ask Brian about. So every year, excuse me, we have our the historic open space and housing buckets. And unlike in regular municipal budgeting, that carries over. It's not like use it or lose it or every year it zeroes out. So either we've used it and it zeroes out, or we still have a balance. So we've had a lot of historic projects lately, so we've zeroed that out every year. From the others, the budget page, I could have color coded these, but the 10% was the 50,000 you see added. And then I made some assumptions here that we're going to use the bucket for historical on the historical projects we're obligated to pay. So that would be ending up at the end of the year, zeroed out again. Open space would have this amount of balance, the 209, and housing would have 522. And that money can only be spent on projects for those specific uses. Has to meet the criteria of CPA allowed spending for housing or open space. So if you go down to account balances from last year, at the end of the year, when we closed out the books, I had been provided with a number of 938,663.22. July 1st. In the past, I always thought that's what we had. I didn't, I mean, maybe some small investment increase, but I didn't realize it could go down because we never had experienced that. Then what happens is when after they close out the books, the town has to supply a CP3 to the Department of Revenue, which gets certified with what's in all our accounts. And that's done by the accountant. The CPC has to do a CP1 with what we spent funds on. And I've been doing that for you, or the chair before you had me. So in the past, that was always the amount we used for town meeting. And that is now at 574,505 on the CP3. However, what I was going to ask Brian, and when we meet, we can, I'm not sure that that even stays the same, because that, you know, does that have 100,000 less? I don't know. So that was the conversation. And I was hoping we could have that with Brian. So what we also have is, in addition to the 574 last year, Andrew, can you go back to the budget page for 1 minute,
If you say please.
please?
Just kidding.
I get bossy, sorry. You see in the green, the budgeted reserve?
Yep.
Every year we can either spend that on projects or it stays in the budgeted reserve. It's a technique that allows us to spend it at special town meeting if we need to. If we don't put it into that account, we're not allowed to touch it until the following year. So it's an accounting thing. But last year we had 400,000 that was put into the budgeted reserves and we didn't spend it. So if you go back to the account balances, please. The 400,000 is from last year. So it says budgeted reserve from fiscal year 23. And then the budgeted reserve from fiscal year 24 is the 326. Just so you understand, Kristen, and we'll talk about it in greater depth, when we make these budgets on the estimated what we think the income's going to be, that money isn't in any account. It's what we're saying we're going to take in over the course of the next year, and we can allocate projects against it.
Okay.
But we did think, or I did think, that the money in the prior existing accounts was like money in your bank account, and when you went there on Sunday or Monday, it would be there.
Right.
Seems like there might be a little question about that.
Right.
So I put this is an estimate, so we need to find that out from Brian when we meet with him, Andrew and Benjamin, and then report back to the full committee. But based on my estimate, we had 1,300,645, 301,000, right? And then what I did is if you scroll down just a little bit, keeping that at the top instead of keep it there. Thank you, please. And thank you. This next area is what we have for obligations. And then I put in things just to put them in there to show you how much you could afford to spend, right? So if you go down below where it says warrant articles on the left, first we have a bond for the Burnett House. That's required. And it's at $77,937.50. I took the historic reserve, assuming I made an assumption that you would use the historic reserve to pay that. And then what was remaining was the $27,754. The library, we have a required bond for $66,075. And that we have to pay. So those are both required. And then the townhouse, I have no idea because they haven't gone out to bid and we're not sure if they're going to issue the bond or not. And there's another spreadsheet we can look at, but when we plan bonding for the three bonds, there's the Burnett House, the library, and the townhouse. The CPC determined how much they could pay towards the townhouse restoration based on your bonding capacity. And that's another conversation we'll have, Kristen. So we came up with how much we could afford, and in the spreadsheet, a different spreadsheet, the first year would be $147,175 for that bond. However, we're now hearing with interest rates different, that bond may be more, right? So there's that number. And then, was I correct that they were looking for 907? Did I write that in wrong? From Algonquin?
I thought it was 700,000.
Yeah, 700,000.
Yeah. Okay. So there's an extra 200 in here. I'll have to look at where I transposed. It was probably 794 or something like that instead of 974. Sorry. But these numbers are estimates anyhow, so I'll fix that for the next time. If you go back up again, you can see that if the account balances are correct with a 1,300,000, then we have all of these four, made up what the bond could be or what it was going to be before. And if the whole Algonquin was at the 900, and now we know it's less, it would come in at 1,215,868, which means we would have enough. Under this scenario, we would have enough account income or balance to cover all the projects and pay for everything. But after what we just heard, all of that is sort of up in the air. And I'm sorry, Brian's not here to answer if it is or not. So is there any question on that?
Listen, it's 9:45. I have to go, but I would like to be at that meeting with Brian Valentine.
Sure.
If you could keep me in the loop on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
But Freddie, thank you for preparing this. I've had a horrific day and I've got a crazier one tomorrow. So I really have to go, I'm afraid.
Okay, before you leave, I'll just say that the bonding sheet I just sent showed us pretty much tapped out for being able to bond anything else, especially if this bond comes in higher. So we can go over that another time. It's not necessary, but you have it if you want to look at it. If we did a 25-year bond instead of a 20-year bond, we'd have more capacity maybe, but who wants to do a 25-year bond? It's not normally done. Anyhow, so that's it. You have those documents. Kristen, I can talk to you at another time. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Freddie.
Mark, can you hang on for 2 minutes because we're going to lose a quorum as soon as you drop? I just want to say that there was I'll skip the annual town meeting timeline piece, go straight to the chairman's report. There was a public records request that was put in requesting from the CPC all communications with Freddie. Keep me honest with this. It was with the select board and the town lawyer.
Town accountant and Lisa Braccio.
Town accountant? Okay.
I'm sorry, did I say accountant? No, town attorney.
Council and Lisa.
Late for me, yeah.
And for everyone. So I think the only ones that really impacts is probably me and Freddie. But there is a there is a request out there asking for that, that we have to respond. I think this is the first time I've gone through this, so I think we have to respond in like 10 days, how long it's going to take to get those together. But it, you know, Ben, I don't think you've had any conversation with the select board or the town council, have you?
No, I have not.
And David, you haven't, have you? Emails from a CP?
No, I have not.
And Mark, you haven't either?
I have not.
Okay. Kristen, you're brand new, so you're out of it.
I'm good.
So I just want everyone to be aware of that. So Freddie and I are going to work on that.
Can I tell you the second part of it?
Yep.
It also requires a full accounting going back to maybe 2017 of every email, every invoice, every communication, any mention of Michael, I think, or Michael Weisham or the Historical Commission or the Historical Society, going back for all of their Historical Society projects. And that's going to take me quite a bit of time to put together because I'm the one who can do it. And it requires, because of the way the request, they want to know when a payment came in and when it got paid. Or I should say he wants to know. I don't think there was more than one person. That the way the request or invoices came in, they came in from all kinds of different people to all kind. I have 3 different email accounts. So finding this and finding all, it's going to take quite a bit of time. And what they request you to do for open meeting law, it's not you have to provide the information within 10 days. You have to provide an estimate of how long and what the cost is. And I suggest that cost is my hourly pay by how many hours I think it's going to take. And just a rough guesstimate, and I'd have to do more, is 10 to 20 hours. Not a simple thing to put. This is like a forensic accounting of all the projects, more than one, and all the emails. So I'll have to take some time to do that. And then when you put that together, you submit it and they decide if they want to pay for it or not. They have to pay for the time, not the CPC. So that is, it's kind of a big deal.
So it looks like, so it says we request communications between the Board of Selectmen and any and all members of the Community Preservation Committee, CPC, including paid consultants from a period of January 1st, 2021 to May 1st, 2022. So that's what they're looking for emails. And then further, we request a complete accounting of CPC grants to the Southborough Historical Society from 2017 date, including all invoices, receipts. So, I mean, that the townhouse should be able to get, right?
Not to split hairs, but we don't grant anything. We make recommendations to a town meeting.
I think they're looking for like everything we paid and when it was paid. So, but anyhow, just making sure.
When the invoices came in, which is an email, that's the email issue there.
Yeah.
They want to know when the invoice came in and when it was submitted for payment. And some of that has multiple emails to explain what happened, is what the point is. There was nothing simple about any of the invoices that came in and the payments that were made. I will just say that. I don't know of one that didn't have something.
Okay.
So
just to be aware of that. Let's see, other than that, so we can push the meeting minutes to the next meeting. Mark, anything else? I'll take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think that was I think that was David got in there first, Betsy. All those in favor? Mills, yes. Ben?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Andrew is a yes. Thanks, everyone. Sorry it was so long tonight, but we got through a lot. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good meeting.
Good night, everyone.
Betsy. I mean, Kristen. Sorry.
Yeah, welcome.
We'll catch up next
Thank you
time.
so much. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you,
Betsy,
Andrew.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Betsy, thanks for calling in from your vacation.